Welcome everybody to our App in a Day Alumni Monthly Meeting webcast. Today we're going to talk about Power Automate. We're trying to talk about some of the simplifications you can get, the connections, process, how to act and react faster with the data and things that you're doing within your systems. And as Bill has mentioned, please feel free to throw some questions into the chat as we're going through this. So this is Rod Donovan speaking now, Cloud Architect here with Velocio. We're also going to be joined with Eric Forgo, the Director of Data Platform Services, and we have a special presentation from Greg Pedone, the Lead Technical Engineer with Landis Gyr. I think I said that correct, Greg. And he's going to talk about one of the apps. And I think this is the second one we've done this one. And next month we're going to have, I think it's going to be Alex doing a presentation. So as you guys see these things and everyone's paying attention to what we're talking about and showing, if you want to show off some of your own apps and things that you're doing, we'll have a spot open for you here at one of these meetings. It'd be great to get some more community involvement. So appreciate it, Greg, for helping out today. So we're going to start off with Greg here talking about his app that he's created. Then we're going to get into the feature presentation, hit some Q&A at the very end. And here's the link again that Bill had mentioned. So please join the App in a Day Alumni Group because we'll try to put some more content out there throughout the month of different things that we're seeing and how people are working with the systems. One of the neat things that has just come out from Microsoft Insight this past weekend or 2 weeks ago is the Dataflex and Dataflex Pro. And if you guys haven't heard of this yet, it's pretty much CDS, Common Data Service, but it's renamed, and the Dataflex versus Dataflex Pro is the difference between using the full capabilities of the CDS platform. The Dataflex is kind of a CDS Lite, so it's all the built-in existing stuff that when you create an app inside of the Dataflex process, inside of the Maker portal, you actually can create a new environment and create a new app within your Teams environment itself. So if you're using Microsoft Teams, you can start creating apps inside of each channel, which creates its own environment in the system. And you have all the basic default system databases or tables that you can get into, those different entities. So it's pretty neat that they kind of, they're bringing it down and simplifying it and slipping the Power Platform into every application Microsoft has. So keep an eye out for more information about the Dataflex and Dataflex Flow processing stuff. So it's really neat that they're, really bringing it into each particular application that they've got and smoothing out the edges as in the process. Today, we're going to talk, start off with, like I mentioned, with Greg and the asset tracker that he's created. And Greg, feel free to jump in here, but when we were talking earlier, you pretty much got an email from your boss saying, hey, I just saw something about this Power App thing. What is it? Is it going to help with those asset control processes we've been talking about? Is that something we can do? So that was your challenge, was to keep track of these physical energy meter devices. So Greg, I can hand it off to you now if you'd like to kind of talk into your feature project.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of different devices we use for testing. So that was my boss was trying to figure out different ways, and he came across Power Apps. So we discussed how we could use that, and we figured out it as actually a good solution. So I'll back up for a second. My name is Greg Pedone. I'm a technical implementation engineer at Landis Gyr. In case you've never heard of us, we make the energy meters that go on the side of your house and all the software associated with it. So we refer to these meters as smart meters. So I remember when I was younger, that someone from the utility company actually had to come out and look at the meter each month to get the reading on it so they could bill us. What we did, and what now all of our competitors are doing, is they've added radio boards into all of these meters so they could communicate with each other and then talk back to software at the utility so they could do all their billing right online from their headquarters instead of sending people out to go read all these meters. So my team focuses on new deployment projects. So, a lot of that, we do a lot of different types of testing. So we have these devices that we need to use to connect to the meters to kind of configure different settings on them. And we were having a hard time. There's about 30 people on my team, and we have about 50 devices that we use for testing. So we were having a hard time keeping track of everything because, you know, we didn't exactly have a device for everyone. And so we were having a hard time. So we came up with this solution when we found Power Apps. So this
And
is
Craig, I got to cut you off there for ask a quick question if I can. What were the before the Power Apps? Were you guys just going to plan on using Excel and maybe a SharePoint list to try to keep some of those things going, or were there other options that this jumped and said, "Oh no, this is the solution. This is the way to go"?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about using like a shared Excel list. So that was kind of the other, I mean, before we implemented this asset tracker, we kind of just, everyone just kind of would borrow devices from each other. And if you needed a certain device, you would just have to go around the team saying, hey, does anybody have this? So it was more of just if you got a device, you took it and held on to it. Now we kind of have a group, like an area where we keep all the devices, and we use this as kind of like a library of, you know, checking in and out of the devices from that area.
Nice.
Yeah, so the where you see it, how it says, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in play mode for now. So where you see that it says scan device here, that actually opens a barcode scanner. All these devices have barcodes on them that we could use to scan them. You can't use that with the web version, and also you know, some of the barcodes were scratched or whatever, and particularly the older iPhones were having a hard time reading some of them. So I added this, which allows you to just type in the barcode number. So we're going to go ahead and type in one of the devices, hit OK. See that you get the device here, and then let's say I was taking this device from the bin. As you can see, I put in the serial number, press OK, and it popped up here just as a visual verification. So I had clicked some buttons in the middle of it when it dropped. So we're gonna change up the order of what I was thinking a little bit. So as I mentioned before, we kind of were having an issue where, you know, more teammates than devices. So we were kind of thinking like, oh, how do we figure this out? So there's actually this asset list here that we created that can show you all of the different devices that we have. You know, this is every single device. It takes a second to load, but as you can see, it kind of shows you just the general information here, and then you can click on it and it shows you the serial number, who currently owns it, and a couple different aspects about the device. So, in case you were looking for a specific device, you could go there and you could actually search by the different protocols that we use, or search like for a certain type of device, or by the serial number. So I had actually already checked out the device, but I'll show you a feature I had added. So when you, let's say I looked at that list, figured out someone that had a device that I wanted, I could go to them and say, hey, can I borrow that? And then I'm going to go to check out that device. So this device that I'm going to check out requires a power and serial cable. There's more devices than cables, so we kind of added that in later on to keep track of the different cables and who has them. So for this, I'm going to say I'm checking out both of them. I need cable, we'll just use cable 1 for both of them. Okay. And you'll actually see here, so it tells me I successfully checked out the device, and it says the device has been given ownership from, I mean, in this case, it's me to me, but in a different case, it would be whoever, you know, from would be whoever you checked it out from. So it could just transfer ownership. So, you know, you don't have to check it back in and out every single time. You could just, if you're borrowing the device from someone else, you could just take it directly from them. So now you'll see that if you go to this My Devices list, let's say you have some stuff checked out and you want to make sure, you know, that you don't have anything, or that you do, you'll see here that it says I have checked out this device that I just checked out in power and serial cable 1. So, that just, you know, helps us figure out who has devices if you're looking for certain ones, and just an easy way to check them all out. And then so there's actually, you know, 2 different kind of devices, just to show some of the logic behind it. This the device I'm about to check out is a Bluetooth capable device, so it doesn't actually have any power cables or anything. So when you go to check this out, it just says you're good to go. And this is what the normal check, this was if it was in the bin, it just says successfully checked out instead of change of ownership.
And Greg, you're using a SharePoint backend for this, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And are those on two different lists, or are all the devices in one list?
No, actually, I have the list pulled up right here. This is
sweet.
everything. So you can see the different columns we have: serial number, owner, asset type, and then just, you know, different things about the device and when it was checked in or out.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then I'm going to check back in the other device because I was using that one for to mess around with some of the settings. So we'll go here. And actually, if you notice, you see how all the devices serial numbers start with LT dash. So I have, you know, some basic logic set up here that you could see, or it's when you press OK, that you see if it starts with different letters based on the device, it's, you know, just different conditional statements that if it starts with certain letters, it doesn't add that LT and so on. So like if
and that, at first pass, that looks like advanced code, but this is the first time you've been doing it, but you're a coder by nature. But getting into it and trying to figure that stuff out from an experience standpoint, was it terribly confusing to you, or was it kind of straightforward of, all right, these things make sense and I can, you know, rinse and repeat?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, pretty simple, pretty straightforward stuff. It's just, and it even if you look, you see how it kind of, when you walk through a statement, it kind of says like if so like it's highlighting the starts with statement, but it tells you the different functions like of each, like when you're starting a function, it kind of tells you what it expects inside that function. So even if you
that IntelliSense has saved me multiple times.
yeah.
And from, you know, when your boss first said, all right, is this going to work? And you said, all right, let me tear into these and try to, you know, figure out what Power Apps is, that ideation process to a proof of concept and kind of getting it in. Was this a 10 hours, 12 hours, 2 days, 10 weeks?
I believe the first iteration of the app, I think I spent about 10 to 15 hours on, and I'm going to say a lot of that was just kind of learning and trying to figure out the different features more than the like figuring out the logic. I mean, I studied computer science in college, so I kind of had that background of understanding some of the things that it was doing of the if statements. So it was more just playing around with the different features and trying to choose one aspect over another. And there's, I mean, I referred to that power users community a lot. That was a great learning resource for all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And Greg, this is Eric. Just curious if, you know, as you kind of thought about this process, right, did you do anything like kind of draw it out in terms of a process, or do you simply, you know, sort of sketch it all out, or did you simply, you know, launch right into, you know, what you had in your head and then start basically structuring, you know, the app?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a little bit of both. I kind of thought about general processes of the whole design of the thing, but then it kind of, as I said, I was kind of just playing around with it at first. So like, I think when it comes to creating something like this, it's good to have a big picture idea of everything you want, and then kind of, you know, different parts when you jump into the nitty gritty details of it, it could definitely change because just based on certain features of the app that you didn't know existed, or, you know, you just see a different way to do the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
So I was going to I'm going to check this device back in. So actually, if you didn't want to go through the whole scanning process, you could go to my devices, and it's this device. So I'm going to click on this and the card. So there's this button is, you know, just some basic logic. It shows you, so you could set the from this drop down, you could just set a lot of different properties of the button. This one specifically is the visibility. So it was just if the device is checked out and the person looking at this card is the owner of the device, add this button in. So instead of, you know, that home screen where you saw you could scan it and then check it in there, this is just another way to check it in. So we'll check it in. So This was a screen, this was something, you know, after we started talking about the process, this was something we added in. So to, you know, to make sure people weren't just checking in the device and like holding it in their desk, we added a, like a verification that they are. We added a barcode to the drawer that we keep all the devices in. So you actually have to go to, like, you have to scan that device. So let me, I actually don't have that pulled up right now. This. So, give me 1 second. I forgot to write down the device number for the bin. And we wanted to make it something a little complicated, you know, so they couldn't just memorize it. So, okay, so now that it knows you scan the bin, and it's going to allow you to check in the device. So if you hit no, it just simply just checks it in and you put it back and you're done with it. But there's some features to these devices that, you know, in case you made some changes, you could hit yes, and it brings you to a form where, you know, you could change the firmware, the DCW, the protocol, or you could, you know, add some notes to it, like you could say, like, if like the lights on the device that tell you that it's on or off, if that doesn't work for some reason, you know, add it. There's a couple different notes you could add. But then when you're done, go ahead and, so since this one knows that I checked out the power and serial cable, I'm going to check them back in. Okay, it's been successfully checked in. Great. Brings me back to the home screen. And now if I go to my devices again, you'll see that the two cables in the device are now not on my device list.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, and then one other feature we added, so there are some cases where, you know, you need to have a device and hold on to it for a while. But in a lot of cases, you know, to avoid people just keeping devices at their desk, as an admin, you see this hoarders button. So
I'm so happy you're hitting that hoarders button because I keep clicking on it myself. I'm dying to know.
So actually, that's another where I had that visibility feature before. This is another one. So if username equals one of us three admins, you see that button. If you're not one of the three admins, you can't see it. So we'll go ahead and click on it. And actually, so currently there's no one that is hoarding onto devices. I mean, we haven't been in the office in a while, so all the devices are checked back in. And this was actually a new feature that I added recently, so it does work, but I had to add a couple columns because I'll show you some of the code for it.
And that's just a time difference math.
Yes.
The definition, you know, however you want to define hoarders can be 1 week, 1 month kind of thing.
Yes, so no devices, I believe it's, oh no, that is the wrong one. Let me go back. Yeah, so we currently have it set to 2 weeks. So I believe it's gallery. So yeah, you see, so the filter for the gallery, so when you choose a gallery,
13 days, okay.
Items. So we have this line here, date difference, 14 days. And then, so one thing we added was this. I would press it for you guys, but there's no one hoarding it, and you wouldn't see this actually adds send push notification. So on your phone, you'll get a little message that says, hey, like, check in your device. And I kind of told everyone, like, if you see that message and you still need the device, that's fine. Just recheck it out so we know you still have the device and that you're still using it. But if you're not using it, go ahead and just check it back in so it's back in the draw available for everybody to use.
Nice.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this already, Rod, that your focus today is kind of the Power Automate. And that's one of the processes, you know, I don't currently have Power Automate into any of the features here, but that is a feature that we did think about doing Power Automate for, but just simplicity thing, it was easier for me to quickly add a button and write a few lines of code than kind of play around with. I've never made an automate flow before, so it was easier for me to add that than to, take the time to go learn a whole new process. But there's definitely some processes with this that, like, if we had an automate flow, I know you could set like triggers. I could set that button and it could send them an email instead to say, hey, like, check out your device if you're still using it.
Yeah, no, that's a great lead-in to what we're going to be talking about today, because some of the things that you can expand on this to do some of those scenarios, and even tie it in there. If certain notes get into the fields, then you can direct the email based on what might be in that note to say, all right, this needs a new battery, this, the button broke, or the scanner's, malfunctioning. Can actually, you can put some of those decisions in there just through reading some of the text. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Rod, that's exactly right. I was just curious what sort of customer adoption has been, on the app, and has it, in fact, to what Rod was referring to, has it sort of led to any additional knowledge about the devices themselves in terms of a potential maintenance schedule, or are there any thoughts around future uses and expansion of the app?
Yeah, so some of the features that, when I originally did create this app, it was more just these, it was just the check-in and check-out devices. And then, you could see all the stuff from the SharePoint list, the back-end stuff of like who has what device and stuff. So to simplify it, I went back and added, my devices in the asset list. And then, it's kind of one of those things, is I made a very simple app just to get something out there, because this is just an internal app that my team uses. Right. So it was kind of, let's just get something out there, and then feedback from the team. I've gone back and made different changes, like adding this, as I said, like some devices are hard to scan. So I added this area where you could type it in instead. And so like, it's just been kind of one of those things over time. We've added some features, and there is more talk about, ways we could improve it, just like, as you said, maybe figuring out a maintenance schedule for these devices, or just different aspects like that. But it's definitely been something, iterations over time, just because it is a internal app, it's much easier to just handle it that way.
Yeah, I think from a sort of a community perspective, you build a base level app, and it, as you mentioned, it didn't take a tremendous amount of time, but it can be incrementally enhanced as you kind of go along. And that's where, some of that productivity comes into play. You get something out there, you get some benefit from it, but then as you learn more about the process, you can make those changes. And, that's the power of the platform, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely, one of the things, as I said before, coming from the computer science background, I have been a part of, classes in college where I did like develop full apps, and that wasn't really the route I wanted to go with my career. But this has been like learning about something like Power Apps was like a great like side project for my job, just because it kind of allowed me to utilize some of that like programming knowledge I had, but like took away the pain of having to create the GUI.
That's awesome. And speaking of the GUI, your interface here, the utilitarian design. Someone just saw the quote this week about UIUX design. It's like a bad joke. If you have to explain it, it didn't go well. So, that's your interface is fantastic. You can't get much more straightforward than that.
Exactly. That was the goal.
That's great.
Okay, guys, we lost a little bit of time with the problem earlier, so we probably need to keep rolling on to the next section.
Yeah, that was about all I had. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll answer what I can later on. But I think they want to get moving with the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, and we don't have any questions right now. If anybody had asked a question earlier that they didn't get an answer to, go ahead and send it in to us again. And if we need to come back and reshare Greg's screen, we can do that.
Great. Thank you, Greg. You seeing the Greg bobblehead?
I love it.
We are.
That's awesome. Nope, makes me laugh every time. So appreciate it, Greg. Thank you very much. And as Greg kind of alluded to, we're going you talk about, Power Automate and some of the things. So I've got a couple of slides here of some different concepts and different things that we've been doing, and then we're going to get into some of the automates themselves. But as Bill had mentioned, we lost a little bit of time with the technical difficulties, so we'll kind of speed through these to get into some of the juicier bits. But again, for everyone, and as Greg had mentioned, he got into Power Apps because his boss said, hey, go try this out. So he started playing with it and said, all right, this is something I can work with. I think I can come up with that POC and then evolve it into a product. And just as we're seeing now, it's evolving, and the next stage is hopefully going to be some of these Power Automate things that you can tie to your different applications. But you are efficiently, scaling at that automation across your organization. That acceleration of productivity and the focus on more strategic work, because you're having this automate process that's doing these things and checking all these triggers and these timed events and these different button pushes. Is all right, this is how this data is going to be moving, and as it's moving in the movement itself, in that transition, it's triggering and causing other events to happen without your system. And again, with the Microsoft Automate, it's the seamless, secure integration. Your security levels are all set, the things that you can do. You can't do anything inside the Power Platform that you can't do without the security leveling. So all these things keep working together to build this kind of, how can we be more efficient? How can we use low code, no code, the templates, the 350 connectors? So as we're going through all of these, it's really fun to see the different stuff that people are doing. When I put out and we'll talk about here in a minute, the different, within our company, different people doing different things with Automate. We were all surprised at the differences and even some of the similarities, but even people doing some of the same tasks different ways. But here, this slide is one of the newer ones that's out there, and it kind of just shows all the different scenarios and things that you can do with the system. Because for the 350 connectors, there are thousands of actions, for those connectors when you tally everything up. So for every particular event, every particular connector that you want to use, you can tie that to another system in another place using those particular actions within those connectors. So, moving all that data around. And then using the Dataflex as your database if you need to write stuff back and hold stuff in transition, or even start interacting and loading up files, loading up names, loading up different datas from different systems, and using some of the AI stuff with the virtual agents that are collecting information from people. And there someone inserts or uploads a document of a certain sort, then you can actually OCR that and read that through the RPA process, robotic process automation, and actually start picking that data up and then throwing it in other systems. And all the different connectors that are out there, it's fantastic because each one is going to do a certain set of actions for that particular app. And if everyone remembers from the App of the Day classes and Dashboard of the Day classes, as you're using these connectors, don't forget to do some research on that connector itself. Don't make assumptions that you see the Dropbox icon that you can do everything with Dropbox that you want. You can't use Dropbox and rip down all of your files. It's trigger event specific. So do some research, and the documentation Microsoft has out there is great on those.
Hey, Rob, sure. Before you get into the examples, I'm going to launch a poll real quick.
Oh, sure.
Just based on those connectors, we're kind of curious. We'd like to see if, as you use Power Automate, or if you have plans to use Power Automate, like you said, there's several hundred connectors already available. We're just curious because this is some of the work that we do. As you use Power Automate and build apps, how likely are you to interact with any of the following applications? Almost there. We've got 70% of you have voted. If anybody's out there that can give a couple of clicks, that'd be great. Okay, it looks like we're closed. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share it. So what do you think about that, Rod? Any surprises there?
Right where we thought it was going to be. If we were coming and going, all right, it's kind of neat how everyone, wants to do different things, but there is this kind of commonality across the board. Eric, any thoughts?
Yeah, I look at it and I say that, because Power Platform is a kind of a universal tool, it cuts across all platforms, all business applications that are out there. I'm just not surprised that it's, we're looking at Office out there, then the integration to, the universe of business apps that can be touched with Power Platform.
You know, one thing I noticed, guys, is that if you look at some of the answers, they're about ERP systems and finance systems, and they have very low numbers, whereas the sales and office have high numbers. I think your sellers, your marketing people, and certainly your services people are more likely to be on the go. So the idea of being able to have apps that they can plug that data in, you don't have to chase them down to react to things. I think that's probably, you know, a big deal for most folks, whereas some of the ERP people, they're sitting behind their desk and they're interacting maybe with different systems.
And you know, the way that Microsoft is building all this into all, you know, the tenant itself and the cloud first scenarios where it's built into, you can working with your Word documents and all your Office documents, taking signatures off of Adobe PDF forms, all those different things. It's built around for that, you know, the Office user to make their lives more efficient.
Right. All right, you have the con again.
All right. So I throw out a question through Yammer to our company. We've got 300 consultants out there of who's doing what with Power Automate. I'm about to do this presentation. Amber, one of our internal project managers, she's got some beautiful stuff going on out there that are just taking information from when we are onboarding process all the way through to when we bring on clients into the system, and how we pull data from CDS and our CRM system and put it into a SharePoint list for one portion of it, and then move some other data and create a new SharePoint site for that particular client, and default some folders and some documents into those sites as we build those up, and kind of tie all these systems together to really bring things, you know, through it, as well as tying stuff into our F&O system. So really, you know, it's great when people start saying, oh, I've got this and I just need to do this one thing. The number 4 there, the auto copying of opportunity documents from CRM to the client sites in our SharePoint system. That was a bear to get through. When you look at it at the end, it's one of the highest compliments. It's like, that just looks so simple when you know it took, you know, 80, 90, 100 hours to build the actual, you know, flow to process that stuff and tie it into different systems. So it's really neat the way that different people are using it. The diagram on the right is one of our sales folks, Jeff DeMaria. He just wanted a flow, but he wasn't sure how to get it started. And for everyone who just wants to get started, you can do it with any diagramming system that you want, any kind of modeling that you want, whatever makes sense to you, but just get it down on paper and say, all right, this is kind of what I'm looking at. And then you can start reacting and building the flow. You could certainly build it in line while you're talking about it, but having a quick diagram to say, yeah, this is kind of the way I'm thinking of it, and share it with 1 or 2 of your teammates, and then just start creating it and working it, you know, within the system itself. But it can really start from anywhere, you know, simple just communications among, you know, team members. You know, Alan threw in a bunch of different stuff. He's one of our developers, and he's got a lot of ties into the Dynamics SL that flows that, you know, pull different customer data and, you know, pushing it to the DevOps and Business Central. So he's moving a lot of different data over long courses of periods, you know, working with that client. And here's the process, and here's the invoicing process, and this needs to go to these people for approval. And then once that approval happens, it goes to a secondary team, and they say, all right, now we need to get the system. Let's generate this other document that goes out to put a PO out to our vendors, because we need to start ordering parts to build these machines, you know, all these different things that you can tie together. So it's really cool that you can just start with something small and then really grow it into the system down into your AP and GL, you know. So the system itself is watching, you know, it's a watcher of itself. So it's cool when you see all these different scenarios. Hopefully some of these things that you're seeing are, hey, I can use that in my company, or that's a great idea. I didn't think it was going to be that easy. Steve, you know, changing status of quotes, and when an order is canceled, to send out some alerts, get the current weather weather stats for a custom entity in the client site that they, when they're planning for people to go out for different field service tasks. You know, is it cloudy? Is it rainy? Is it wet? Is there lightning? Can they even, you know, fly their drones that day? All those different scenarios are being fed into the system because you can collect it all. It's that easy nowadays. And Tony is generating work orders after a quote is won. You know, that whole process, and that, again, approval process is a fantastic scenario. You know, it set up the accountant schedule, the unscheduled work orders, and hold if account gets put on credit hold, to automatically kill those upcoming events. So all these different scenarios, whether it's an ERP system, CRM system, homegrown system, you can start tying these things together. And one of our clients, RMS, and I think Timmy might even be on the phone, she was kind enough to let me take some images of the stuff that she's working on that we're trying to get through. And she went to the app of the day and said, all right, Flow's great. Flow can help me with this process. And she tried to do on the right-hand side, some switches, and it was confusing. And there was some double entry going into some of her SharePoint lists. So she scrapped that one. And then on the one on the left here is, all right, I just need to get this done. And it was all nested if statements. So if it matches this criteria, then do this. If not, here's this one, here's this one. And you can see that it's just this mirrored effect of, based on those different conditions, how to put everything together. So you really can create the same event multiple ways. We're going to try to again to figure out on the switching side where that double entry was happening and why those things are there, because it's a little bit easier for the system to stay at one line than versus the multiple iterations in that nesting process. But both of them are correct. It's not really a wrong way to do some of these things, but sometimes there might be a little bit way to control it and ease it when you want to monitor it going forward from a visual aspect and from a management aspect. You can kind of see these differences there. Now we're going to jump over and do some live demo process. Give me a second to switch screens. And hopefully we're seeing my desktop.
We are. We see Power Apps now.
Okay. And one of these flows that I've got going right now, this was just a test for a client that was doing some field service stuff. And they wanted a button on someone's phone so they can log in and click a button on the phone. And it's a simple process, just get the content, convert a time zone, and then do a geolocation insert into an Excel sheet that's up in a SharePoint list. So we've got the SharePoint living out in a particular location that everyone can get to and everyone can write to. We collect certain amounts of information. And then when we actually fire it, it does an insert here into the table to say, all right, here's the actual address that I'm at. And it's really weird is that here's my address here, Adriatic, but if I move 10 feet, I'm in the neighbor's house on the other side of my fence. So it knows where I'm at, down to a couple of feet, and for some reason it thinks that I'm in my neighbor's living room instead of my house. But it's a simple app where just running a quick thing. So now that everyone in the field can just insert their information and say, all right, I'm at this location here, I'm at this location. You kind of build that stuff up. And whether it's going to a database or a Excel sheet or a SharePoint list, you can now have it someplace and then start doing things with that information. Another example here is when a new user queue, so when we bring a person, this is one of Amber's, when you bring a new person in, onboarding in the system, we'll start the triggering process and we'll go through that scenario and then we'll create some variables and pull that information in. And then for each one of those, add it to the different arrays. So as you're, if it's completed, go down this path. Not hired, prospect. So each one of these switch conditions, manager has yet to update the information, always, down to CRM status, and then send out some emails and get some information from CRM to start building these things out, and then send off the emails and make sure these conditions are met if they're hired. So as you build these out, they can really get some fairly extensive processing. And this one alone, we're using 3 different systems that Amber's got in there to try to pull these things together. Another example here, and this is one with Tammy and RMS, that here was, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to bring this stuff together, the switching analysis process, but this nested one, and each nesting, you're going through and pulling this information. Again, we're using the SharePoint list here. Amber was pulling in data from SharePoint and from CRM, and we're writing this information saying, all right, is this matching this set of criteria? So as you build these out, you keep constantly testing. Move this down here. You can keep constantly testing everything and processing that data and seeing, the success and failures. When we go back in through the some of the history of it, you can see that when it's a great thing that I really enjoy about this is when you're processing it through, you can actually see the system as it's working it through, and you see these green check boxes and say, all right, these are the ones that it's processing down. It gives you that visual indicator to say, all right, this is where my path is going and this is how it all worked out. So, as you're going through these things, you can actually watch it and say, all right, this is where it's failing and this is why it's failing, and correct that one process. So building these out, it gets that much more information, and you start to get that intuitive nature going, through that process. And those, some simple basic ones that Amber was going through, that weekly email one. Oh, and there was the other one that had, I think it's still up here. I don't, but inside of your flows, you've got, certainly have one that's going to send a weekly reminder email to myself and Aaron, and I think I've got one other person in here, but every week, instead of taking up time on my calendar to remind me to do something, I just send up a simple reminder that's going to run, every 7 days, get my information, send it to me, and then also copy other people if we need them to. And as we go through it, it's just a simple HTML markup of the process of here's where it's coming through. Here's the information I want to send every week to go through that process. So as we go through it, it's really neat to start leveraging the system in different ways as a simple reminder without taking up calendar space. And I can process these things through, and it can be anything that you want in there. When we get into some of the more extensive ones, and this is one of the Microsoft products, this is the Power Platform Center of Excellence. And we're going to be doing one of these upcoming alumni meetings is going to be strictly on the Center of Excellence and all the different things that it does. And we're running out of time here, so I'm going to kind of quickly jump through some of these flows. But the Center of Excellence is designed to help you manage your system itself. And these flows are reading all of the Dataflex tables, CDS tables, and saying, all right, these are the apps that are running, and I need to set these different variables and update the system so that I can use this as pretty much a large system traffic copying scenario. But the flows run on multiple events, multiple times a day, and keep watch of the system itself, so I can just go to this one dashboard to see what's going on and see how things are working, see who's doing what, which locations and regions are doing different information, running those things around. So it's all built in and free. But as you get into looking at some of these automates themselves, they get really extensive, and they really can build the process out of make sure that this happens, make sure that this happens, and if anything doesn't happen, start alerting people, keep watch of all these things. But these complex systems and processes where I'm jumping into 3 different locations to pull this from 3 different sources to get one picture of where the system is at. And also the return to the workplace app that Microsoft just put out for everyone. Again, these, get a day pass and how you want to control your people coming back into the system and who's got access to which office for the COVID-19 scheduling to make sure you don't have too many people in the office. But yeah, we're using Microsoft tool set and all the different things in there, whether it's the book, the resource room inside of Exchange, all the way through different people are allowed in different buildings, but not other buildings, because you can approve for one versus the other. So you really can start bringing all these different information, these different connections in. And as you're working through it, you then can share it out with 1 or 2 other people on your team to do some UAT testing, and then publish it out to the whole company, and still, get that kind of gain and increase of that efficiency. Because again, we're trapping data based on triggered events or timed events, and then say, all right, what do we want to do with it, and what other system needs this information?
Yeah, Rod, I think that, the common theme across everything that you've shown so far is really an increase in productivity as well as efficiency within an organization. So think about that first Geo app, and think about a service manager who has a lot of service team members who are out in the field and simply wondering, where are they? Yes, you can pick up the phone and call them, or you can simply begin to utilize systems that are going to essentially help you manage, the organization more efficiently. So I think for the community out there, that is the challenge. The challenge is to find ways and find apps that are relevant for you, that are going to boost productivity, increase the automation, and really use data to intelligently kind of run the business. So I know that, everybody who's on the phone today, as Greg did, can find one area that they can kind of build something quickly and kind of go to market. And as we talk with clients, clearly we hear that, the use of this technology has a high return on investment. Obviously, it depends on the size and scale of your organization. One organization shows a $500,000, return there. Obviously, that's a large organization, but it all is relative, right? What is $50,000 savings is huge for certain companies, and there is this return on investment in terms of a number of months rather than a number of years. So
and even as Greg has shown, if I can jump in there, that a simple efficiency of now we've got a system and a process in place to manage all of these expensive, meters, and even as they're releasing the new Bluetooth ones, and saying, all right, now we've got this data collected. Now we can even do more by knowing, bin and lot tracking of these, existing assets. It's that once you get in and you start gaining a little bit of efficiency, it's exponential in the way that you can carry it forth.
Absolutely, yep. Yep. And of course, Velocio, our goal is to bring this technology to our clients and prospects and talk about the Power Platform and the integration between Power Platform and not only Dynamics as a platform, but then also any other business application that is out, in the workspace, and then assist clients in kind of that transformation to the cloud. So I think that's very important.
Hey, Eric, can I interrupt you? We have one question that's come in, and I think this is actually a really great time to ask it.
Sure.
We're going to be short on Q&A. So I'm going to rewrite the question a little bit. So what I saw today, and when I compare that to how Microsoft describes these products, everything is low code, no code. It's easy. You throw it up in an hour. You learn it in a day. Some of the stuff I saw there I'm somewhat technical. I'm not super technical, but some of the stuff I saw today is beyond me. It's not super easy, and it was certainly not missing coding. So how do you balance between what you try to tackle internally versus when you call a Velocio for some of the things that you're sharing right now?
Yeah, I think that, that's a fantastic question. And I think there's that bridge between having a base level of knowledge that you acquire through an app in a day, to basically creating that first application. And there certainly are kind of some best practices around that. And I think, in general, you want to sort of balance that level of complexity with your internal skill set. And, of course, we have, additional sort of rapid implementation types of offerings that can assist clients in doing that. But then as well, there is additional training that's available that allows people to kind of bring you to that second level from that original app in a day class that everybody took. So Rod, you can kind of comment additionally.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because a lot of that code that we were just going through, some of those arrays that they're using, and where I start off with the simple stuff of, all right, here's just me sending a goofy email to Aaron every week and saying, don't forget to do these tasks, all the way through to the end of, all right, here's a system that's monitoring and being a traffic cop for thousands of apps running inside of my tenant and giving me a dashboard. That end of the scale, there is still programming that you can use and things that you can evolve into. So it is, once you get out of your comfort zone, we all go to Uncle Google for advice. Even all of our coders do as well. Of like, what's the best way to do this? So you kind of evolve into that until you tap out of your time or knowledge, and need to raise your hand and call for assistance. So it's a very fluid nature for each person that we work with on our teams to say, all right, I'm comfortable with doing this, but if I get it over my head with arrays, I'm calling Aaron or Alan and saying, come dig me out, dude. I'm stuck. Because they're low-level real coders, where more like a business analyst, architect. I can read code, I can understand it, but I get confused myself, with throwing some of those things around. But it's that evolutionary process again, where I'm out of my depth and I can recognize it. But I did put a good effort in, and I got 3/4 of the way there. Now I have to spend less time to explain it to the coder what I'm trying to do, because we're looking at the same set of analysis.
It sounds like for the average company, there's going to be, a number of things that you'd have to go to a partner for, that you can knock out yourself. They're simple. You can roll them out internally and people get it. But one of the things I think I noticed as I saw that there is that, like what Greg did earlier, you would typically have to go to somebody who would pop into the code and they would spend lots of hours developing an app for you. It'd be a big project. if you were to have come to you guys at Velocio and said, hey, can you knock this out? Just the nature of this tool set says, A, you can knock it out way more quickly than you could have traditionally. And after you're finished, you hand it over to Greg, and Greg can edit it and make changes and evolve it like you were talking about as you move forward. To me, that's
we've got a lot of clients like that, exactly, where we'll go in and then explain the code to them. They don't have to know it, but they can go in and look at it and say, oh, here's where those 3 conditions, and I just hired a new person, so Greg has got another guy on his team, and we need to throw that person's name in so they get the hoarders button. Because it's uncompiled code from this nature, you can really educate people quickly on what it's doing. You may not have the full understanding, but you get the concepts, and you can start running quickly with scissors.
That's great. That's great. Well, sorry to interrupt there, but I thought that was a good time to kind of.
No, that's great.
That's perfect, Bill. Thanks. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I mean, we play with our clients in a number of ways, and I think as the last discussion kind of evidence, participating, with you early in the process to help you design things is a great way to engage a company like Velocio. But there's a series of other ways that are listed on the slide, and that goes anything from training through proof of concept to development of strategy. And the next, yep, you bet.
And then, again, if feel free to join the alumni, because we'll try to keep these conversations going all month long and try to, design what we're going to do for the next couple of months to work out. But feel free to come in to the group itself, join the alumni group and start asking questions, post your thoughts, theories, because the more interactive this is for everybody, the faster we gain. As Greg had mentioned earlier, using the boards themselves that are out there are great, but when you get into a smaller group of like-minded individuals, you can kind of get a lot of answers quickly when we get to know each other and start helping each other out, which is kind of one of the purposes of this whole process. And Power BI, private eye.
Yeah, in terms of our next session, so it's to become a Power BI private eye. So it's just better decision making with Power BI, and so that'll be an exciting session, and we'll go through the strengths of Power BI and some best practices around utilization of Power BI as well.
And again, it's being dropped into teams where you can throw dashboards in that show different, metrics and criteria to different channels. Microsoft is doing a fantastic job of building all that stuff into those systems and saying, all right, this is going to be accessible across the board. And I think we've got info at Velocio. If you have any questions, or you can shoot me an email or even communicate through the LinkedIn group itself. But on behalf of Eric and Bill and Greg and myself, say thank you, everyone. And Bill, were there any final questions that came in?
No final questions, just one final thank you for everybody who got kicked out twice and rejoined and stuck with us through to the end. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. That's fantastic. I forgot about that. That was only 30 minutes ago.
And listen, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email, and we'll make a recording of this, and we'll cut out all the craziness and send it out for you guys to view on your own time. Thank you all. That concludes today's event.
Thank you much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg.